Hey guys, I got a request from one of my subscribers to do a two-column layout. He's been having trouble with doing this with HTML and CSS, and the website that I have up right now is actually a working example of what I plan on creating for you guys. It is div based, so if you want to switch the side where the sidebar is, it's pretty simple to do that. With the rounded corners, it does make it a little bit more difficult, and it doesn't look as pretty when you look at it in an older browser. Let's say we go into Internet Explorer. It looks fine here, or relatively fine as far as you can get with Internet Explorer. But if I go into Developer Tools, which was new in IE 8, and go down to 7, you'll see that everything becomes square. And I'm just showing you that so that way you know that it actually is CSS based. I don't have images and all that stuff. So it makes it a little bit easier when you're doing your layouts. And none of the images that I have, or none of the coloring that I have, is image based. So I'm going to jump right into this. I'm going to close IE and open up Eclipse. And I'm going to create a new project, just a PHP project. Any kind of project would actually work as long as you have the ability to make an HTML file. And I'm going to call it Wally X3 since he was the requester. And I'll click on Finish. And now I'm going to right click New HTML file. And I'm just going to call it index.html, and this is the main file for any directory when you're using any kind of web hosting. So my HTML file is created, and inside my body tag, I'm actually going to create a bunch of divs. I'm going to move my timer out of the way. I do have a cheat sheet open. This is the code from the previous the example that I just showed you. So I'm kind of cheating, but I want to make sure I do this correctly and I don't have to stop the video 20 times. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a div. I'm going to give it an ID of wrapper, and what this will do is it'll set up the defined space for the columns and the information for my website to occupy. And inside of my wrapper, I'm going to create a div ID and call it container. And there's a reason why I'm creating a wrapper, and then inside of the wrapper I have a container object, which I'll get into that once I get into the CSS styling. And the next thing I'm going to do is create my column 1 div. Oops. All over the place tonight. And inside this I am going to create another div, give it an ID of nav, and inside of my nav, and I'm going to indent these so that way it's a little bit cleaner. I always recommend that you do this so that way you can easily read your HTML files. There we go. It is a little bit of a pain, but it does help keep you organized in the future. I'm going to create an unordered list, give it a class of menu. And the reason why I'm using unordered list or an ordered list, either one would work, is because I feel that the unordered or lists in general give you the most flexibility for your menu system. I would not recommend using images for your navigation items, and the reason for that is the search engine will look at the links that you have there, and it'll look at the text. If it's an image, it can't see the text there, and it will look at the title tag or the title attribute of the image, but it's using text in the image or in the anchor will be much better. So I'm going to close that off. I'm going to call it home, create another list item, call this one page 2, and create another one and call it page 3. Okay, so now I am all done with my column 1, so that is right here, and now I got to go create my second column. So here I'm going to create another div, give it an ID of column 2. And inside that I'm going to create a div, give it a class of blog article. Oops. And inside that blog article I am going to use an h1 tag, give it a title of new article, and then I'm just going to go grab a bunch of random text. You can go to lipsum.org, use their Latin text generator, copy the code, paste it in, and I obviously don't have word wrap on, but I am just going to put in some paragraph tags. Jump to the end. Go to the end. There we go. And I'll just finish these off really quick. Alright, so I have my content, which I'm going to see if I can turn on. Okay, well I tried getting word wrap to work on this and apparently I couldn't. So I'm just going to continue. So now that I've entered all my content for my main column, I'm going to add a footer. And I'm going to go outside of my column 2. And I'm actually going to go ahead and bump these in a little bit. Couple of things that I just tried, reformatted my document. So okay, document's all nicely formatted, easy to read. I'm going to create that footer and I'm just going to put in a div tag, give it an ID of footer, and inside of that footer I am just going to grab this unordered list here, copy it, and just paste it in. And instead of having a class of menu, I'm going to give it footer menu. And I'm doing this so that way I can separate the two. Otherwise, the way that I created this, the menu in the footer would actually take on the styling for the menu up here. And I think that just about wraps up everything that I need for HTML. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to jump over to Google Chrome, open this, and Wally X3. There we go. So now, as you can see, it looks horrible. You have your unordered list up here, big H1 tag, and then paragraphs, and yada yada yada. Now we want to make that look a little bit better. So what we do is we start inserting some style. So inside the head tag, I usually do it right before the closing head tag, but that's just my preference. I'm going to do style, type, text/CSS. Alright, and I want to target a specific tag, the body tag in particular. And I want to give it a margin of 0 pixels and a padding of 0 pixels. And every browser by default has padding to the margin spacing and padding to the browser window itself. So we want to get rid of those, and then the last thing we want to do is set the background color, and I just chose a random color 424246. I'm going to hit save, jump back over to Chrome, refresh, and you saw that the text jumped over a little bit and the background color changed. So the body piece is all set. The next thing we're going to do is stylize our wrapper. And as I said before, the wrapper is just to define a specific width and to really center the element on the page. So I'm going to do width, and I'm going to do 1024 pixels wide, and there's a specific way that I center div items on a page. You can't really center them easily, So my little workaround, and this is well documented on the internet, is to use an auto spacing or an auto margin for the left and the right. And what that'll do is it'll automatically calculate the space left on either side, and it'll put that wrapper in the middle. So now that that's all done, I'll jump back over to Chrome, refresh, and now you see it's nicely centered and we have our defined space. So the wrapper's all done. The next thing I'm going to do is stylize my nav item, or my nav ID. And I'm going to give it a margin of 1 EM, and what an EM is, it's really one font size. So it's like a 24 point or a 12 point, whatever the font size is for that element, it's going to take 1 or 100% of that. And I'm also going to put in 0 pixels for left and right. And I'm going to give it a background of none. This won't really make a whole bunch of difference here. It's really once I start getting into stylizing the menu that will really take place. So the nav is all done, and now I'm going to stylize my container. The container has a little bit of styling. I have to give it a float item or a float setting, just because the other elements or the wrapper won't stretch correctly. So I have to set this to have a float or be. I won't explain it that way. That's just a little too confusing. But I want to give this a width of 100%. So it's going to take on 100% of the wrapper width. And I'm going to give it a background of very light gray, EF. And one of the new things to CSS3, and I believe you could do it in CSS2 with select browsers, Mozilla was one of them, is border radius. And I just like 8 pixels. But what this does is it gives us those nice rounded corners. And if we do Moss border, and this is the Mozilla version, so if it falls back onto this, then it will still work in Mozilla. 8 pixels. And the last piece is margin spacing, and I'll give it that 1 EM again and a 0 EM otherwise. So now I'm going to save that, jump out to Chrome, and show you the difference. Now we have our nice rounded corners, we have a nice light gray box that encompasses everything, and now it's really time to start working on our 2 columns. So first I'm going to do column 1. And column 1, I'm just going to give it a float of left. And there's kind of a bug with, I'll show you really quick. I'll do 20%. And I'm going to stylize column 2. And I'm going to give that a width of 80%. Float of right, so that way it pushes to the right and the column 1 pushes to the left. And I'm going to give it a background color of light gray, border, and I'm just going to give it a border on the left side of 1 pixel, solid, and a medium gray. And I'm going to give it a padding on either side of 1%. And I actually have to change this to 78, or else you actually have to modify your width if you're using padding in most of the browsers that I've seen, just because this will add to your overall width as opposed to margin, which will just push the content in, but it'll keep that particular width. So you have to compensate whatever padding you have in. You have to change your width to compensate for that much. And the last thing I'm going to do is set that border radius to 0 pixels, 8 pixels for the top right, 8 pixels for the bottom right, and 0 pixels for the bottom left. And the reason why I'm doing this is because when I go back to my design, if I Jump back over to call 2. Whoops. Oh, I guess I got rid of it. Anyways, oh, here we go. So if I look over here, this corner is nice and square, so that way it meets up nicely, but this corner is round, and I wanted to round out each of these corners so that way it looks a little nicer. And that's what that is doing. Oops, radius, 0 pixels, 8 pixels, 8 and 0. So I'm going to save that, come back over to my Wally X3, and now we have our nice rounded corners. Everything's all nice and rounded out. Alright, so now we have this pretty much on par to what this is going to look like. There's a little bit of spacing at the top, but that's not a problem. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to modify the body of the article itself. So I'm going to give this a little bit darker color, and then the title is going to have this light bar here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop back into Eclipse under column 2, and I try and set up a hierarchy so that way column 2 is the outermost item, so we have that here, and then inside of that I'm going to put the blog article class, and it just helps me stay organized. So I'm going to give this a border radius of 8 pixels. Oops. And a background color of a lighter shade of gray, and padding around the whole thing of 1 pixel and 5 pixels for left and right. Alright, so now that that's done, I got to stylize my title. Blog, article H1, and if I didn't use this particular class designation followed by the H1 and I just use the H1, this would be applying the style to every single H1 tag that I have in my website. So it's nice if you're using the same styles globally, then I would take that approach. But if you're stylizing different pieces and different parts of the page, I would use a class. Either something like this, or you could also do H1 and then give the H1 a class. Do something like this. And this period, there's no space between that, so it is basically telling the browser that it is part of that H1 class. It is the H1 tag. It is the class of the H1 tag. So with this, I'm going to display it as a block level item. Oops, did that backwards. So display block, and there's different types of displays. I'm not going to get into that, but this one seems to work the best. Oops, moss, border, radius, border radius, 8 pixels, margin, we'll do half a font size, and then 0. Padding will be 3 pixels. Background will be very light gray, and then we'll give it a border of 1 pixel solid and just a touch darker. So now if I save that, whoops, it must just be my version of Eclipse is acting up different colors. So now if I jump back over to Chrome, refresh my page here, now I have the nice darker color that wraps around my blog entry, and my title is stylized. You can add color and all that stuff if you want to, but I'm not going to get into that. And the last piece is stylizing my footer and stylizing my navigation menu on the left side here. I'm going to jump right into stylizing my navigation item or my navigation menu. So I'm going to jump back over here, come back over to where column 1 is, and I'm going to put in a nav ID. And with this, I'm going to do a background color of mid-grade gray, border radius, and I apologize if I'm flying through this. This video is already 20 minutes long and I'm not quite done yet. So I am going to post the files along with this, so you will have those. Give that a 5 pixel padding and 1 pixel on the left and the right. Margin, I'm going to give it a 1% pixel on either on the top and the bottom, and 4% on the left and right. And we'll just go width, and we'll set it to 90%. And I don't think I actually even showed you why I need to adjust the width for this. If I open up Internet Explorer, paste this in, you'll see that we have problems. Now, if I were to change my column width from 20 to 19.9 for some reason, and then refresh, it corrects it. So that 0.1% is just enough to make IE have some problems. And if I go back through and do, let's say IE7, I believe this is good all the way through to IE7. So we'll keep on going. I'm going to close out IE. And with that fixed, we should be good on all cross browsers. So now we have our navigation all set up, and we got to set up our menu class. Our menu class, we're just going to do a background color of a little bit darker. We'll do it like a 999. Sounds good. Border radius 8 pixels. Moss border radius 8 pixels. Margin, we'll do 5 pixels. Padding, we'll do 8 pixels top and bottom, and 0 pixels left and right. Display, we'll do a block. Okay, so now if I save it right now and just go out and take a view, refresh, we get this nice little border around it, we get our inner stuff, but our list items are still all messed up. And in order to fix that, we get to target our menu class, and inside of our menu class, all of our list items. Now we want to display these as a block, so that way it stretches all the way across and they're all equally sized. And then we're going to give it a background color of EF, and we'll do a border bottom 1 pixel solid, and we'll just do we'll do 9s. This one's going to be a little bit different, but that's okay. So now if I jump back out to Chrome, you should see that these take the correct look correct. So now if I switch back over here, this one's a little bit darker with the border, but I thought a lighter border would look better here. So the top of my page is all set. Now we're going to style the footer. And this is why I like using list items as opposed to using any other form of any kind of menu. And the reason for that is you can just copy your unordered list, and you can just place it down into another section and just apply different styling. So now if I do footer, so I'm going to create my footer ID, background 3s, color, we'll do a white color for the font. Height, we're going to do 25 pixels. Clear, we are going to be clearing both left and right float items. So this way it pushes down below both of them. And border dash radius 8 pixels. You don't really need to do this moss border radius, but I would recommend it, so that way it is backwards compatible for the most of the browsers, or at least you can get that rounded corner look for as many browsers as possible. We'll do a 5-pixel border, or 5-pixel padding, and text line. Geez, I can't type right now. And we'll do text align center. So now if I jump back out here, refresh, we get this nice footer here, but our menu item is all screwed up as it should be right now. So with that in mind, we're going to do footer menu, and this is the UL item that we had stylized before, or that we were targeting. 0 pixels, padding 0 pixels, and that'll just remove any padding that we have for that menu or that unordered list. And we'll set this one to display inline, so that way our list items are not stacked on top of each other but in a row. And this doesn't always work for every browser. I think if I switch over to IE7, I do have a problem with this, but the workaround for it is much more complicated. So padding 0.25 EM, 0.5 EM, and border left on all of the list items, 1 pixel solid, and give it a white color. The last thing I'm going to do is target the first item in that list. So do footer menu, li, first child. And what this is doing is it's allowing me to remove my border from that first child item. And I'm actually going to get rid of any top padding here because I remember it didn't look right. So I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to refresh, and now we have our menu down here. If you wrap these in anchors, you can actually create a menu system out of it. I'm not going to get that far into it, but if I wanted to create a new blog entry here, all I would have to do is come down here, grab my blog article div stuff, paste in a new version, change my title, save it, and come back over here and that didn't work. And this is why it's so important to line up your items correctly. I actually just copied this. So now this is still not correct. Alright, there we go. Now we should be good. So now those are lined up, these are lined up, and this one needs a div. So what had happened was I copied and pasted an extra div, and if I save it, go back out here, refresh, now you'll see we have this other blog down here. I should add a little bit of margin spacing, but before this video gets done, I'll go right to the 30-minute mark. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the column 1 and column 2 and reverse them, so you can see the power behind using CSS and div tags as opposed to table based. So if I, instead of float left, I do float right, and column 2 right here, I'll do float left, and I'll save that, come back out here and refresh, and you see that both of these are flipped. In doing so with the rounded corners, you're definitely going to want to fix this rounded corner, so you're going to want to flip them so that way this outside is rounded. But other than that, it's that simple to create a right side sidebar. Hopefully you found this video informative and it wasn't too convoluted. Like I said, I'm going to post the files that go with it. Really it's just an HTML file, so you can I'll put that in the zip folder. You can download it and you can take a look at it. If you wanted to put, actually I'll just do that really quick. If you wanted to put a header in this, what you can do is inside the wrapper, put in a div, give it an ID of header, and inside the header create a new CSS entry. Alright, so what I did was I just grabbed an image that I had for another header. This is just a simple website that I was working on, but I just wanted to grab that and plop that in. So I'm going to do background, give it a URL background / images. So I was targeting this folder, and inside this folder I am going to do header.jpg, or no, header.png, no repeat, top left, give it a width of 1024 pixels, a height of, let's see if I can grab it from here, I don't think I can. I think it was 3 something, so do 316 pixels, save it, come back over here, refresh, and now we have our header. So adding a header is really that simple, and then you can again add more elements in as you see fit, but hopefully that was pretty simple. I will throw everything in here, including this header, which looks horrendous in my opinion. I was just dumbing around. But let me know what you guys think. Hopefully, like I said, you guys found this helpful. And if this didn't really answer your question, Wally, just let me know, and I'll see if I can put together some kind of example that will make a little more sense. Take care.